What's up, fellow internet denizens? Everyone has their literary limits, and it's healthy to set good boundaries. Sure, I may be judging books by their covers here, metaphorically and in some cases literally, but in most cases that is healthy. After all, there is a reason I don't pick up the rom-coms that look like their cover was designed by the same people who make workplace conduct modules. I want to make it abundantly clear that I am not trying to yuck anyone's yum here, so if I don't want to read something you like, please don't freak out in the comments. So without further ado, let's talk about more books that I will never read. I remember one of my relatives in Alaska had a shelf full of Dick Francis books. I plucked one out because I was 12 and I thought the name Dick was hilarious, like everyone does, but I opened it and I found it was about some horse jockey solving a mystery. I am not into horse stories, honestly. To me, horse racing feels very privileged, and while I did grow up somewhat privileged, I have never been anywhere close to the tax bracket required to enjoy horse racing and the mysteries involving it. I also have never heard anyone speak about these books, yet I always see them at thrift stores, right next to John Grisham and Clive Cussler. Now, Clive Cussler has a self-insert that pops in to give advice, or do Deus Ex Machina stuff, in almost every one of his books, and somehow he has a fan base that just accepts this. I am not a fan of author self-inserts, even if their side characters are not even named after the author. This is why I didn't like where Undead Unluck went, and why I have opinions on The Last Dragon Chronicles. I give bad fanfics an exception, but only because I'm weird. Also, Stan Lee gets a pass because he only ever appeared in the background and he was a god. You know what? I actually might make a separate video on where author self-inserts work versus where they don't. Let me know if you guys would like that. Next up, let's talk about the Left Behind series. I picked up a copy of the first Left Behind book when I was in college around the time that I left the Catholic Church, mostly because I had read too many heavy novels that year and I wanted something stupid and fun. Now, when I left the church, I found that some of the worst people to talk to about this were evangelicals, because instead of having a nuanced discussion or hanging out with me and helping me cope in a healthy way, they used the fact that I used to be Catholic as an excuse to be vindictive and to dunk on those Mary worshippers. That first book gave me the vibe that this was written by people who would do the exact same thing if they found out I had complex feelings about my past religious convictions. Especially since only one Catholic, the Pope, got raptured in this story, and the only reason he did get raptured was the fact that he had a sudden change of heart right before it happened. Left Behind felt like a weird conservative power fantasy, and I just don't need that in my life, you know? Speaking of authors that I've only read one book from, I have read one Pierce Anthony book, and I found it boring, and the dialogue felt so forced. What kind of 17-year-old boy sounds like a Wikipedia article when he talks about adult magazines? Now, the Xanth books were recommended to me by a friend of a roommate who said that I'd like them because I like puns. It's true, I do like puns. However, after reading Triple Detente and hearing several allegations about Anthony's proclivities, I will not be giving his books, especially Firefly or Xanth, any attention aside from maybe laughing at their wacky covers every so often. Speaking of wacky covers, hockey romance covers are bizarre. I do like hockey. Hockey is cool. I like watching Canadians beat the pulp out of each other and get put into tiny boxes for being too angry. However, I don't really care much for TikTok-style romances. If there's a hockey romance equivalent of Wuthering Heights, let me know. I might read that, but I'm staying the puck away from hockey romances for the time being. Speaking of romance, Zodiac Academy gives me weird vibes. What if, get this, Harry Potter was spicy and every character was over 18, but still went to magic school and there are bullies who are also adults? Just no. Just fucking no. That's gross to me. Let's talk about something a little bit more wholesome now. The One Little House on the Prairie book that I read a piece of when I was in 4th grade was so fluffy that I stood up 5 minutes into our daily sustained silent reading time, marched to the book corner at the back of the class, put it back, and picked up an Animorphs book instead. I didn't even get in trouble. I think my teacher understood my pain. I just don't like fluffy folksy stuff. Maybe I'm broken. In a similar vein, this is also why I won't read any Amish romances or that pumpkin spice cafe thing that was popular on Book Talk for a hot minute. My exception here is cozy fantasy, but that's because I like fantasy. Speaking of fantasy, I enjoy the occasional isekai. I don't enjoy when they start quantifying data and crunching numbers and suddenly everyone has arbitrary stats. I think the only animes that have pulled this off for me are Konosuba because it's a parody, and Overlord because it's less about that and more about securing power. I am currently watching That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, and the number crunching is getting kind of annoying, but I'm trying to ignore that because I like the political intrigue. I don't think there is any way to possibly pull this off in a book that will successfully grab my attention. Again, I love Portal fantasy, but once you start getting meta and adding random numbers and so on, I don't really care anymore. I am sorry to the one person who actually enjoys these. Let's talk about something with a lot less structure than that now. I knew a girl in my high school who had to read The House on Mango Street in her AP English class, and then again in her Spanish 4 class. From everything she said in both versions, it has no punctuation, it's heavily stream of conscious, and it has a girl getting assaulted by a clown. Now, I'm all for stylistic writing. The Poet X and Long Way Down are great examples of stories written entirely in verse, and I love them because their formats are a theme of their respective stories. I am not a fan, however, of stream of consciousness and its punctuational consequences. Or clowns. Speaking of clowns, I will never read any airport self-help books because they give me bad vibes and they're always hawked by the stupidest people. You know the type. The 48 Laws of Power, Atomic Habits, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, that sort of thing. Again, they're mostly propped up by people like Oprah, and I don't even think she reads the books she picks for her book club. Even if the people pushing these books have read them, I don't trust them. They're mostly talk show hosts who push sensationalist bullshit anyway. Speaking of things that got popular for no reason, let's talk about anything by Runix. I am a goth, and I enjoy the occasional sad romance. However, I have heard terrible things about Gothicana. I have heard that the cover was AI generated and the publisher claimed they didn't realize it until after it was published, which is always a fantastic sign. I have heard that this story has a toxic teacher-student relationship. Don't worry, the student's an adult, I just think the power dynamic thing is gross. I have heard that the plot is all over the place and the twists are stupid. I have heard that even the character names are stupid. Therefore, I will not be reading Gothicana nor any other book by Runix, especially since I saw that one author's note from Predator. Speaking of pretentious and stupid things, the fashion industry is stupid and gentrified. I know I'm definitely angering at least one of my viewers by saying this, but most catwalks I've seen feel less like something you'd wear in public for any occasion at all, and more like something the citizens of the Capitol would wear at Hunger Games for one day before throwing it away after 15 minutes and wearing something else just as weird. I have heard that Model Land is a weird and terrible book about stupid fashion. While I love weird, terrible books, I have already heard Crimson Rogues and 372 pages videos on it, and it's been spoiled for me. Also, I think that even if I did read it, I would not understand all the fashion stuff. I may be a goth, but I don't really know all the words for fashion things. I wear black stuff with studs and laces and a heavy dose of eye makeup. Start talking about cravats or matte Duchess satin, and I am out. Furthermore, it's out of print anyway, so even if I did want to read Tyra Banks' magnum opus, it's gonna be a little difficult to get a hold of it. Now, another book that was popular around the same time that I don't want to read is The Mortal Instruments. I have heard that it's based on Cassandra Clare's Weasley incest fanfic, and that's fucking gross. I know that the incest is only implied here and it's confirmed to have been a lie all along, but that just still grosses me out. It makes me nauseous, you know? I've also heard that Cassandra Clare was a cyberbully in her old Harry Potter fanfic circles, and hearing that kind of ruined her for me. And finally, let's talk about another thing that was popular around the same time that The Mortal Instruments and Model Land were out. I will not be reading The Fault in Our Stars. I remember it was so big when I was in middle and high school, and so many people around me said that I looked just like Hazel or Heather or whatever the fuck her name was. Keep in mind, I looked nothing like her at the time aside from short brown hair and maybe wearing jean jackets sometimes. I look even less like her now. I just made a vow at the time never to read a sad book with a character who looked like I did. Furthermore, it was spoiled to me a while back, and I don't care if it's got something deeper. I just don't want to read this book. I like John and Hank Green, but I'd rather just read their other works than read this. What books do you guys avoid like the plague? Do you avoid books based on vibes, or do you have concrete reasons? I'm curious because, as you could see, it's a mix of both for me. If you like any of the books I listed, I don't mean to harsh your mellow, and I'm certainly not saying that these books are bad by any means, because I haven't read them except for the first Left Behind book and 5 minutes of Little House on the Prairie. Actually, if you like these books, sound off in the comments. Maybe you guys can change my mind. I've been Alien Daydreamer, and I am out. Bye!